Hi, everybody. Welcome. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Aspetillo.ai. And today I've got Danu with me today, and we're going to be talking about his book, The Navigator's Pivot, a reflection guide to work-life transitions. Danu, thank you so much for coming on. And I'm just going to say, you're in Melbourne, Australia, which is why we're doing in the morning. I don't generally do them in the morning. And isn't it amazing, the technology, that you're in Melbourne and I'm in London, and we can talk and have this conversation like this? It's nearly free. Isn't it amazing?
And absolutely amazing. I mean, yeah, we've on opposite ends of the Earth, different hemispheres, different weather as well. Look at you in a t-shirt, and I'm
it's different. I'm in a t-shirt and you're in a jumper. So, Danu, first and foremost, where can people find you?
The easiest way is LinkedIn. Look for me on LinkedIn. I am pretty active on LinkedIn, so that's probably the best way to catch me.
Excellent. So tell us, what was the inspiration behind the book, The Navigator's Pivot?
Thanks, Tim. I've had a fantastic 25-year career in international development, working across 20 countries, lived in 7 countries across 5 continents. It's just been a wonderful ride. And I've had the luxury of actually meeting a lot of people at various stages of their careers. But I've also had the fortune and sometimes the misfortune of going through a number of challenges in my career as well, and just like everyone else. But over the years, I've realized that uncertainty is part of the game, and in fact, the norm. And if you look at careers over people who've had, what is treated as success, or sometimes people think that their careers have not been successful. There's always the positive and the negative, and the pivots that people make over the years kind of lead to a final reflection of what has actually happened over their careers. And over the years, I've also realized that there are 3 types of pivots: a misalignment pivot, a forced pivot, or a possibility pivot. And these 3 pivots have ones that I've had, I've kind of experienced, and others have as well. And so I wanted to share these ideas. It's a book about reflection. It's about looking through the lens of metaphors.
And I was about to say it's a metaphor, yes.
Absolutely, and giving the story of navigation a little bit of an interesting sort of twist from a career perspective.
Right, let's get into my questions. So you spent decades navigating complex global environments and international development projects. What was the exact moment or recurring pattern in your career that made you realize standard career frameworks were broken and that professionals needed a navigator's mindset instead?
I don't think there was one particular moment as such. It kind of evolved over the years. I think when you work in international development, the level of uncertainty is quite high. It's quite high. But you also realize that you don't necessarily move through this step-by-step linear sort of upward mobility of careers that sometimes the people in other sectors might do. So therefore, the idea of thinking through careers from a lateral perspective, thinking things through from the idea of making subtle shifts and changes, adapting to situations, came naturally over the years. And I've longed to find certainty, I think, in certain situations. And but I realized, I think maybe 15 years ago, that it was not going to happen. And the sooner we realize that uncertainty is actually the norm, and kind of don't look at stability, don't look for certainty, don't look for this fixed model, that's when you really blossom into someone who can actually move through and find success, find opportunities in places that most people would think that, there isn't much happening. And that's where your career really ends up being quite fruitful.
In the book, you make an intriguing distinction between a pivot and an inflection. Can you explain the difference between the two and why ignoring the internal inflection can make a career pivot feel empty?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. The pivot, as I mentioned, there are three types of pivots, but the pivot itself is something that you see, right? Like it's a change in your role, for example, or it's a move to a different country. Others can see that you've made a change. The inflection point is something that I explain as something much deeper. For example, if you move to a country or you move to a different role, others may not see the shifts in identity, the shifts in values, the shifts in ambition that might be, some things that you've actually moved through, and ones that are much more transformative. So I kind of distinguish the two. If you ask me which is more important, I think both are important. You can't have one without the other. But I think we should kind of think through the inflection as being one that is really at the heart of the final journey. Because when you think back, you'll have various designations. You'll have lived in many places. You would have met a lot of people, but your identity, the real you is a series of inflections and a series of shifts and changes internally. So I kind of distinguish the two, and I think if you think through in those two different perspectives, it really helps to kind of shift away from this role-based or country-based identity to one which is much more based on your deeper meaning of the moves.
One of your core arguments is that we should trust uncertainty as a temporary emergency, but rather as a normal condition of modern work life. How can a professional train themselves to make high stake decisions with imperfect information without giving into overthinking or anxiety?
Well, that's a good one. I think if you look at even now, right? If you look at the geopolitical situation globally, if you look at the AI revolution happening, you'll see that every job, every career is affected in some ways, some much more than others. But every role is shifting and changing. So you think to yourself, how am I going to deal with this? And I think there are 3 to 4 kind of steps you can think through. The first is, uh, what exactly do you actually know, right? So out of this situation, what is actually known? And it might be just a few things, but within that, the greater the context of uncertainty, there are still a few things that you know for sure. Second is, what are the assumptions that you're making? Right? So what are the assumptions that you're making, and are those assumptions valid? And you must understand why you're making those assumptions. If you're clear on what those assumptions are, that helps you to think things through from a next step perspective. Thirdly, I would probably say you've got to really think about what steps would actually be irreversible and would sometimes might cause you irreversible harm. So what you want to do is make sure that you don't make a really bad mistake, right? So how do you avoid making a bad mistake as opposed to trying to do something good? You think through how do you actually prevent yourself from making a major mistake. And then fourthly, what would be the next best step that you know for sure is actually still reversible, right? So if something is still reversible, if you can actually make a shift and change. Take for example in COVID, like a totally unexpected event.
Yep.
Oh, a lot of people like, oh my goodness, how am I going to deal with this? Uh, but every little small step led to something else. And there were a lot of people who actually did extremely well during COVID time, much more than they did before COVID. And that was because they were reading the signals around and they were kind of understanding their context very quickly. Whereas others were actually waiting for the pre-COVID situation to come back. So it's really about understanding, where mistakes might be made and where opportunities lie.
You introduce 5 distinct stages of transition: disorientation, orientation, pre navigation, navigation, and integration. For someone listening who is currently feels stuck in that very first stage, disorientation, where the old map has stopped making sense. What is the healthiest way to pause without panicking?
The healthiest way to pause is really to really think about why exactly are you feeling that way? What exactly is affecting you and causing this situation? So understand what exactly is happening around you. Orientation or disorientation is really because your inner compass isn't quite balanced, right? And to understand why it's not balanced requires a fair amount of reflection. A lot of people get stuck in terms of, and they don't want to move. They feel that things are really difficult for them to move in terms of a next step. There are others who move very quickly. It's almost as if they're panicking and they move to something else. So you don't want to do either of those, right? So neither of those actually good. What you want to do is actually take a step, but after reflection. And that reflection requires a deeper thinking, not only about what your inner values are, what your inner goals are, but also about what exactly the context is showing you. Most people become inward and or too inward in terms of when things are difficult. But it's actually the perfect time for you to see what's around you, speak to people, see what the signals are in terms of the context, but understand what those insights are giving you in terms of next steps.
Excellent, thank you. I love the animal metaphors in the book. You mentioned the albatross, which is exploration and range, and the turtle, which is grounding and memory.
Mm.
When we are facing a massive transition, how do we balance the albatross's urge to fly off to new horizons with the turtle's instinct to protect our core fundamental values?
Yeah, these two animals that I mentioned are real wonderful navigators in their own right. Right. So
Mm.
the albatross can fly for miles
Yeah,
without even flap of their wings. And the turtle, obviously, the female turtle returns back
yeah,
to home where they were born. So the fact that you could use these characters or these creatures as examples of what you need to do in terms of navigation, I think is very insightful. So for transformation, there are people who and I understand why they think so. They will say, just leave your past behind, right? Just forget everything in your past. Just look forward. Uh, don't worry about any of your past actions or experiences. Just look forward. There are others who are caught in the opposite way. They're just constantly thinking about their past and they don't move forward. So what you want to do is to treat yourself as two different sort of entities that can actually do both. One that stays grounded and understands the place that they came from, the identity that the identities that were created over the past years, and that gives a sense of home. It gives them stability. It gives them a sense of place, whilst they move forward, or they rise and kind of move forward in terms of growth. And as these two creatures kind of provide those insights, you find that the breadth of your experience grows significantly, because you're actually remembering your past whilst growing in the future, and therefore your overall experience and your overall identity actually continues to increase, as opposed to it just being a linear direction.
thank you. You introduce a few key toolkits in the book, including the transition compass and the 4 periscopes. Can you break down how a professional can use one of these tools practically this week to assess their current career trajectory?
Sure. I'll take the 4 periscopes. So the 4 periscopes are based on the 4 navigator archetypes that I mentioned in the book: the policy navigator, the business navigator, the research navigator, and the creative navigator. These 4 navigators, say you work in public service, or you work in business, or you're an artist, or you're a university researcher, for example. You might see these as 4 distinct professions. But if you think quite carefully, as someone working internationally, it would be useful to be able to understand how each of those individuals think and adopt the kinds of perspectives that each of them has. Sometimes one more than the other, obviously. So the policy navigator thinks in systems. And to be able to think in systems makes things quite holistic, and to be able to understand the political economy, for example, to understand how institutions function, how decisions are made at a policy level. That helps in a number of ways. The business navigator thinks in markets, thinks about, obviously the classic supply and demand, the risk, how to take risks, how to take decisions based on financial metrics. The research navigator is inquiry based, right? Looks at ideas, is constantly trying to find new things, and that research sort of mindset is a wonderful mindset to have constantly. And the creative navigator is one about expression, and to be able to express yourself in artistic form or in other forms provides an incredible sort of perspective, to be able to then make things quite holistic. So these four periscopes that I talk about are ways of thinking, ways of looking at the world. And I encourage you to kind of read the book to understand each of those in a little bit of detail. But the key insight that I can give you is that you don't have to just have one periscope. I encourage you to actually think about having more than one and shift your perspective depending on the need. And whilst that shift is happening, you will see that your own experience will grow, as you navigate through your career.
A deeply comforting thesis in the book is the most meaningful pivots often occur not by escaping our current lives or quitting our jobs, but by realigning where we already stand. What does a quiet pivot look like in practice for someone who can't just give up and leave their current role?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. I'm really happy you asked it, Tim, because I say this quite clearly towards the start of the book, that a pivot doesn't have to mean leaving your job. It doesn't even have to mean leaving an organization. It can actually be just a shift in the way that you think or the way that you approach your job. Sometimes there's people work with a little bit of negativity in their work, and sometimes it is what it is because of circumstances. But just a change in perspective can completely transform the quality of the work that you do. To understand how it aligns with your purpose, and how it allows you to create new opportunities, not only for yourself and for others. So pivots happen in different ways, and sometimes you're subconsciously making pivots without you realizing it. And people say, "Oh, I've worked in this organization for 15 years. I've done the same thing, over and over again." Sometimes I tell them, what? Just think about it. Just think about have you not actually pivoted several times? And they realize that they have, and it's not just a shift or change in their roles, but it's just the way that they have actually approached their role in a different way. Sometimes with a greater maturity, sometimes with greater awareness of what's going on around them. And sometimes it's just about better collaboration with others.
Writing a book about reflection is a deeply reflective process itself. Did your own relationship with uncertainty change while writing the Navigator's Pivot? Did you have to execute a mini pivot of your own during the process?
No, absolutely. When I started writing the book, I didn't write it to publish. I wrote it to help me just make sure things are clear from my perspective, and perhaps support a few others in terms of coaching them and mentoring them. But then as I worked on the writing, I started pivoting into writing it to publish. And now I realize that, just even this conversation now, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have imagined having a podcast with you, Tim. Right. So this is a transformation in its own right. And that's the beauty of working with uncertainties, because you let yourself move in the way that the currents take you, but with intention, right? So don't let the currents just wash you away, but kind of move forward in a way where you take on new opportunities, you're able to reflect on these ideas in a way that further supports and strengthens what I've written in the book. And so I mean, to be really upfront, I think the publishing of the book itself has been almost transformational, right? So, and I've kind of pivoted after publishing. So the book itself was a pivot, and the writing of the book was a pivot. The publishing was a pivot, and who knows what's next. I am working on the second book, and I feel that it's a wonderful transformation.
This podcast was a pivot for me 10 years ago, so I know what you're talking about. So last question: if someone reading or listening to this interview takes away just one core habit to help them navigate the unexpected ways of the modern workforce, what practice do you hope they will integrate into their daily lives?
I would say there's a lot that people do in their work that makes them happy. There is a lot that perhaps may not be satisfying, but everything you do must be based on clarity of purpose, and I call that the South Star. And the South Star comprises of three different constellations. The book has details. So what I would ask people to do is think about what are the three most important things in their life. And if you're clear on what those three things, everything you do should align with those three in some way. And if it doesn't, it's an easy decision because you're probably heading in the wrong direction. Right. So, and I would encourage you to really think through, not about what your designation is, not about how much money you're making or where you're living or who you're working with. It's like, why are you working? Why are you working? What's keeping you? Why are you keeping busy in this way? And if you have three reasons and all three reasons align very well with what you're doing, you're heading in the right direction. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much money you've made and the roles that you've had, you'll think back with a lot of satisfaction.
Danny, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book, The Navigator's Pivot, a reflective guide to work-life transitions. If I wanted to buy a copy of this, where can I get one from?
Just check on Amazon. It's there on Amazon and obviously other online bookstores. And you'll easily find it.
And where can we get more information about you?
Look me up on LinkedIn. And of course, that's the easiest way. But just do a Google search on me. I'm the only one with my name, so it's easy to find.
I've done a Google search on you, and you are findable. I can find you, and you are the only one with that name, yes?
That's right.
Thank you so much for coming on and talking about the book. Lovely reflective session.